Everyone, and welcome to the full council meeting on the 5th of October 2023. This is my first time presiding, so I would ask that you all be on your best behaviour, which I'm sure you all will be. Item agenda 1 is apologies for absence, so I will ask Hugh Evans.
Thank you. I have apologies from Councillor Jan Curtis, Councillor Francesca O'Brien, Councillor Cheryl Philpott and Councillor Graham Thomas. Are there any others? F. Jones, any others?
Councillor Nicola Matthews.
Nicola Matthews. That's
it. Councillor Will Thomas.
Will Thomas, thank you. Any others?
Councillor Ali King.
No, Councillor King is present. Yeah, he spoke to me earlier.
There you go. Item agenda 2 is disclosures of personal and prejudicial interest. So I will call on Deb Smith to offer any advice to councillors.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I haven't sent an email out to you today because there's no obvious interests arising from the agenda items that we have before us tonight. However, if members have any personal circumstances which give rise to specific interests, obviously please declare them and remember to fill out the declaration form as well, please.
Are there any interests from councillors? Councillor Mike Dirk?
Yeah, my partner works for China Family Social Services within Dave Howe's department. I thought maybe that might be a personal interest.
You, Mike. If there's no other declarations of interest, item agenda 3 is the minutes. And so subject to Councillor Bev Hopkins being added to the list of those present, is somebody happy to propose these as a true record? There we go, thank you. And that's seconded. Item agenda 4 is the written responses to questions asked at the last ordinary meeting of council, and they're found on pages 8 to 9. Item agenda 5 is the announcements of the presiding member, and I've got a lot of announcements tonight, so please do bear with me. But it is good that there is plenty of positive things to announce this evening. The first announcement is that the Council's Building Services and Housing Team Service recently jointly won the APSE Award for the Best Service Team in the Housing, Construction and Building Service category. So I want to wish congratulations to all of those involved. The Council's Ageing Well team was shortlisted for an APSE Award in the Best Health and Wellbeing Initiative category. This is for their Wellbeing Partnership Walk, which was initiated coming out of the COVID lockdown. Despite not winning the award, to be shortlisted from over 300 submissions was an exceptional achievement. I want to wish congratulations to all of the team and thanks for the dedication and commitment towards supporting our older population in Swansea. They are making a considerable impact on the lives of many of our residents from across the city and supporting them to live well and to age well. My third announcement is that the Council's Evolve Youth Service has been shortlisted for a Community Safety Award for its outstanding work. It is a wonderful accomplishment to be shortlisted and to be recognised for the impact that youth outreach workers are having with our young people in our communities right across the city. The award ceremony will take place on the 17th of October, and on behalf of the council, I wish to offer them the very best of luck. Congratulations to all staff involved with the iconic Copper Bay Bridge that now spans across Oystermouth Road, linking the city centre with the arena and the coastal park. At the recent Structural Steel Design Awards 2023, the council's architects for the bridge ACME won an award for its high standard of design. I'm sure we're all very pleased about that. The council has recently launched a resident survey asking what they think of the council's services and staff. The feedback will hopefully help us to further improve what we do by responding to residents' views. It is also an opportunity for them to rank which services they would prioritise, and this will feed into our budget discussions in coming months. The survey can be found at www.swansea.gov.uk/residents survey. And then my final announcement, you might be pleased to know. The Local Democracy and Boundary Commission for Wales is conducting a review of Swansea's community boundaries, and the initial consultation period opened on the 25th of September 2023, and it will close on the 19th of November 2023. Further information relating to this review is available on the Local Boundary Commission website. Consultation responses should be sent to consultations@boundaries.wales or Local Democracy and Boundary Commission for Wales, Hastings House, Fitzland Place, Cardiff, CF24 0BL. Item agenda 6, there are no announcements from the Leader of the Council. So we'll move on to item agenda 7, which is public questions. And we have a public question from Mr. Davis. So, Mr. Davis, if I could hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you. Yes, fine. I can, yes, okay. Thank you, Presiding Officer. David Davis from Pencloud. I refer to page 155, item number 10, 1.4, which is education. I'd like to say that this is a repeat performance because I asked the question 4 years ago in this chamber, which got the approval, I think, from all sides, which I was very pleased about. So I'm hoping it's deja vu this time. So if I may, about 4 years ago in this chamber, I proposed a competition where school children would compete by writing an essay on a subject of their choice. And the winners would be awarded, both boy and girl, with a cup. Perhaps separate competitions for under and over 12s would be appropriate. The format could be devised by the Education Department here, which I know would make it an exciting and stimulating project. Queen Camilla has recently suggested a similar venture with the winners invited to Buckingham Palace. I don't think we can stretch that far. Now, drawing on my past experience teaching, I recall that the word that I told students I would never accept was the word boring. And I suggested to them that anything could be made interesting if you used a little bit of imagination. So I said to them, well, point to anything in this classroom and I'll try to make it interesting. They pointed to the desk where I was. So I thought, oh my goodness me now. So I stood up and thinking on my feet, I said, oh yes, I am a fly. And my home is on this desk. I love it. With all the books here, I can read about the history of the world. But what I hate is Friday. The cleaner comes along, tries to swat me, but I fly away. She couldn't catch me. When she leaves, she polishes the desk. And unfortunately, I slide all over the place and it's very dangerous. So what am I saying now then? Here we go. This abstract approach appealed to many of them, and I am sure there is an abundance of talented students, potential bards in our schools. So I'll submit this to you, and presiding officer, I have to ask you a question. May I ask you whether it can be accepted this time? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Davis. If I hand over to the Cabinet Member for Education, Councillor Robert Smith for response.
Yes, thank you, Presiding Member, and thank you, Mr Davis, for that question. It's good to see you in the chamber. I'll certainly try and answer the question. You're quite right. You did bring this to our attention. I think it was 3.5 years ago, February 2020 is the date I've got on the letter that was sent to you by my predecessor. Obviously, you'll be aware and appreciate that things moved on since then with COVID and everything else. So this is something that hasn't had attention, but it fits in with our plans in terms of literacy. It fits in with broader agendas within our schools and the education service. So I'm certainly happy to look at this again and revive it. There's a large number of cultural organisations that work with the council, and there are others that want to work with the council or want to increase the amount of work they do with us and work with our schools. So I think, there's an opportunity there for us to do something in conjunction with other people and take something forward. And I'll be happy to update you in due course.
Thank you for that response. We'll now move on to item agenda 8, which is the annual report 2022/2023 from the Director of Social Services. So I'm going to call on Dave Howes, Director of Social Services.
Thank you, Presiding Member. This is my 7th annual report to Council and looks back at the performance of your social services functions for the years 22-23. I'll begin by paying tribute to the skill, professionalism and resilience of all social services and social care staff across Swansea, whether working for the Council, the third or independent sectors. They have all continued to be the best that they can be each and every time they knock on someone's door. Also want to pay tribute to the many hundreds of unpaid carers, volunteers and other members of the communities of our communities who continue to support many of our most vulnerable residents. 22-23 remained an incredibly challenging period as we continued our recovery from COVID whilst grappling with the consequences of the war in Ukraine and the cost of living crisis. I'll turn first to children's services. We anticipated that 22-23 was likely to be a challenging year. Children and families' lives were severely impacted by COVID. The extra stress on families of long periods of lockdown, the disruption to the usual arrangements for school attendance, and the disproportionate impact of the cost of living crisis on the least well-off families would all likely increase the risk of family breakdown. This has played through into pressure on children's services, with increased demand at our front door and higher levels of presenting need. This pressure has been exacerbated by a national shortage of registrant social workers and a lack of sufficient foster care and residential placements. This perfect storm of increased demand and restricted capacity has meant that this continues to be the most challenging period in children's services since I've been Swansea's Director of Social Services. Nevertheless, your children's services have been extraordinary in rising to and mitigating those challenges through constant innovation, remarkable resilience and downright hard work. Your investment in early help hubs, the remodelling of youth and family support services, including your sector-leading approach to contextual safeguarding, has now led to around 1,200 children and young people receiving preventative early help support on any given day. This has enabled us to prioritise statutory children's services on ensuring that approximately 1,200 of our most vulnerable or at-risk children receive a timely and intensive intervention to help ensure they remain safeguarded. It's also helped ensure that the number of children having to become looked after remains on a downward trajectory that continues to buck the national trend. Workforce innovations, such as the creation of a social work academy at the front door of children's services, the increased use of alternatively qualified staff, and the significant use of sponsorship that provides staff an opportunity to pursue a social work qualification, will all help rebuild greater capacity and resilience over the next 2 to 3 years. During 22-23, looked after children's placement sufficiency became and continues to be a significant concern. The number of children being placed in residential placements is on an upward trajectory as a result not just of increased complexity of need, but because there aren't enough foster placements. Whilst government's eliminate profit policy intent has caused disruption in the market and exacerbated the issues around lack of placements, there remains uncertainty about whether and how sufficient numbers of not-for-profit providers will enter the market to replace the for-profit providers who will need to exit. In this uncertain context, the local authority will need to become as self-sufficient as possible. This will mean creating double the number of in-house fostering households and 5 times the number of in-house residential placements over the next 3 years. This is an unprecedented challenge for the council. In the meantime, during 22-23, more and more children were having to be placed in unregulated provision for short periods, with care provided by staff from across children's services on top of their day job, adding to the stress of staff with an already incredibly busy workload. Yet again, the service is innovating to address this new contextual challenge through the development of new and additional flexible support teams, so that we have staff trained and available to respond to such circumstances should they continue to arise. Despite all of this challenging context, I continue to receive literally hundreds of compliments and testimonies of best practice describing examples of your children's services staff supporting families to provide safety for their children in the most difficult of circumstances. When I look back on my career as a children's social worker, I'm incredibly proud of the work that I did, but the work of your children's services staff knocks anything that I did into a cocked hat. I'll turn now to adult services. For the last 3 years, my annual report has been dominated by the impact of COVID on the health and care system. In 22-23, we began to see adult social care services begin to recover to something like the capacity that our population would have historically relied upon. However, those services have had to adapt to respond to individuals' and carers' needs, which are noticeably more complex. As the health and well-being of the most vulnerable in our population has deteriorated during COVID and as a result of the cost of living crisis. The individuals we support are sicker and frailer and their living circumstances more challenged. Carers are exhausted, both as a result of increased caring responsibilities and because their own personal circumstances are more difficult. Our pool of registrant staff across health and care has reduced. Despite the welcome commitments such as implementing the real living wage for our lowest paid staff, it remains the case that many individuals working in social care could earn more working in Lidl's, I suspect a somewhat less stressful career. Again, given the systemic challenge of less resource and more need, your adult services have recovered remarkably well. Waiting lists for domiciliary care are now the lowest since I've been director. This despite that at times during the last 3 years, they've been 300% higher than at any time in Swansea's history. The combination of recovered capacity in both general and more specialist day services, alongside new approaches to providing day opportunities, means that we are now supporting more individuals to achieve their personal outcomes and enabling more carers to receive respite. Our in-house residential services have significantly increased capacity to support both hospital avoidance and post-hospital intermediate care, including that our specialist reablement offer in Bonamine House is recognised as sector leading. We are now testing whether an equivalent Bonamine House offer for individuals with dementia can be provided from our Team and Arlyth home. Early indications are that we are delivering similarly positive outcomes. We do have an ongoing challenge. Demand for new assessments across older people's services outstrips our capacity to respond in a timely fashion. In this regard, adult services beginning to learn the lessons from children's services that we will need to remodel our approach to focus more on early intervention and prevention and to get ahead of that demand. In reality, we have a finite capacity to provide care, and our offer across both health and social care needs to be refocused on supporting the maintenance of health and well-being, not simply responding to escalating levels of acute health and care need. The Council is beginning to recognise and adapt its offer to better reflect that different approach. The integration of your tackling poverty services within wider adult services is a good start. The numbers of people being supported across the range of tackling poverty initiatives and services is at record levels. Nationally recognised new models of care, such as local area coordination, are beginning to replace some of our traditional and unsustainable health and care responses. However, in a context of potentially reducing levels of public service funding, it may be increasingly difficult to maintain investment in longer-term approaches to supporting population health and well-being when current critical health and care demand risks overwhelming us. Striking the right balance will be a challenge for the Council looking forward. The report before you provides a full suite of performance and management data, all of which continues to be scrutinised by 2 dedicated social services performance scrutiny committees. I don't intend to dive into the detail, given that those committees continue to do an excellent job in doing just that. However, my overall assessment is that the numbers reflect the pressures I've described. Some areas of performance are less good than we are used to or would prefer, but overall performance continues to hold up very well and your services remain safe and effective. I'd like to acknowledge and thank the 3 cabinet members for their support and hard work. These are tough times to be a director and equally tough times to be a responsible cabinet member. I'd also like to thank the chairs and members of the aforementioned scrutiny performance panels and their colleagues in the corporate development committees. Your efforts continue to challenge us to make sure we are always striving to be the best that we can be. Presiding member, I hope you can indulge me for a couple more minutes whilst I reflect on a couple of examples that, for me, epitomise the quality of practice of your social services staff. Recently received feedback on our work with an individual who'd been known to social services for many years. Her adult life was at least in part characterised by long-standing issues with her mental health, problematic substance use, abusive relationships, insecure housing and debt problems. She's found it difficult to work with professionals over the years. And then she fell pregnant. Now, if we had an artificial intelligence program that determined whether that baby could stay safely in the care of that mum, I suspect the computer would say no. Indeed, if something went wrong and that baby was harmed, I suspect the papers would be castigating the social worker and your obviously inept Director of Social Services. But through the skill of that social worker and your specialist children's and other services and the hard work of that mum, that baby is thriving in mum's care and the case is closed to statutory services. And as a final example, a couple of weeks ago, 2 of our domiciliary care staff turned up to a visit and found an individual had fallen out of bed and had sadly suffered serious life-threatening injuries. Those staff were immediately joined by 2 colleagues, managed to administer emergency care that kept him alive until the ambulance arrived. Devastatingly for the staff and family, despite the carer's efforts, he died in hospital the following day. I can't imagine how incredibly traumatic that whole experience was for those staff. But despite that, once the ambulance staff took over, our staff went to finish the rest of their calls because they knew the other individuals would be waiting for their visit. None of what's in the report before you would happen without the incredible leadership of your 3 responsible heads of service and their senior management teams. And none of it would happen without your amazing social services and social care staff, whether frontline or in support services, who day in, day out strive to make sure we are the best that we can be each and every time we knock on someone's door. Thank you, Presiding Member. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Howes. I'm going to call in Councillor Louise Gibbard to formally propose.
Thank you, Presiding Member, and thank you, Dave, for your detailed report outlining the vast spectrum of work that we do in adult, in integrated and in child and family services and difference we're making. I think, you know, what really brings it to life are those examples throughout the report and the 2 things that you alluded to just then. I want to thank you too for your leadership of the Social Services Directorate, steering the ship through choppy waters in recent years, which don't seem to be getting any calmer, and for continuing to demonstrate your commitment every day to the people of Swansea and to the workforce as a whole. I don't want to repeat much of what you've said, and obviously the information's there, but I think we're making really good progress, guided by our sound principles of early help and prevention, of doing with and not to people, ensuring voices are heard, partnership working, and continuing to innovate and transform our services to fit the evolving challenges and changing nature of our communities. So I'd like to formally move the report and put on record my thanks again to you and all the staff.
Thank you. I'm going to call on Councillor Rob Stewart to formally second.
Yeah, thank you, Presiding Member. Like Councillor Gibbard, I want to place on record my thanks to you, Mr. Howes, your heads of service, and all of our dedicated workers in both adult and children's services. The examples speak for themselves. I don't think there was anybody in this chamber or online who will not be touched by the real life stories of what our staff deal with every day, and we should be hugely proud of the work they do. And you only mentioned it in passing, but I think it's a really important one we return to. As you said, we are currently at the lowest level of domiciliary care that we've ever been, and that is remarkable given where we were during COVID and the pressures that every local authority was facing at that time. And I just want to pay tribute to the work that you and your teams have done, that the cabinet members have done, because that is not the position elsewhere in the country. Local authorities across Wales and England are still struggling to bring those numbers down from the high levels seen during the pandemic. So, and of course, every person we can help live independently and to thrive in social care keeps them out of hospital, keeps them well for longer, and that helps take pressure off health and save the pressures and allow other people to get treatment in the under pressure health service. So again, personal thanks from me, Dave, for the work that you and your teams have done, and on behalf, I'm sure, of everybody in the chamber for the excellent work that's going on. And I formally second the report.
Thank you. I have a number of questions. The first on my list is Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams.
Thank you, Presiding Member. On behalf of Councillor Susan Jones and myself, as the conveners of the 2 Social Services Scrutiny Performance Panels, and I'm sure on behalf of all councillors, can I thank you, Mr. Howes, for your comprehensive report, comprehensive as it always is, of course. From carrying out our scrutiny work, we are well aware of the problems the department has had, particularly in recruiting staff at the current time. Despite this major problem, it continues to provide an excellent service to its clients, and indeed is always looking forward to enhanced service provision, as you've already explained to us. We would like to thank the officers and managers who come to scrutiny to present reports, and importantly, the staff who deliver the services despite all the problems that exist following on from COVID. I am sure councillors will want to express their appreciation to our social services staff for all their hard work in delivering the necessary and vital services that their clients are dependent on. I hope, Mr Howes, and I'm sure you will, that you will take this message back to your manager and staff. Thank you.
Councillor Chris Holly.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I think it goes without saying that I think everybody appreciates the work that you and the staff do. I think it's to be applauded, especially what the leader was commenting about the low number. I think that is really appreciated. I do have a question for you, which I would like a written answer for, and that's on page 61, the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service. What's the current timescale for the first visit after a referral? You know, a written answer would be fine. But again, congratulations on the report.
Yeah, I will have to provide a written answer to that one, Councillor Holly, but I'll get that to you.
Thank you. Councillor Alison Anthony.
You threw me for a second, Sam. That's me. Yeah. Look, I don't want to repeat what people have said, but it has been great working with you. And Dave and I sit on the Poverty Truth Commission as well, and I can't tell you how involved Dave is. He goes above and beyond for people. He's the secretary to everybody there, and I take my hat off, and people speak very, very highly of you, Dave, and feel that they can talk to you and that you listen, and that is really, really important. And I'm sure that stems from your social work background and that you understand people. And I just, you know, I would like to thank all the staff, because we have got really excellent staff right across the spectrum. Do you remain? But I was in a town hall meeting yesterday, as the poverty services call it, in the large room, but I don't know the name of anywhere. Sorry, the one up there. But the stories yesterday were just unbelievable. Honestly, from whether it be the employability team, who are well above their targets of Welsh Government, whether it be welfare rights, who are so passionate about their work. You know, one rang me about 8:30, I don't know, last week or the week before, very, very upset on a referral that I had given them. A lady, it's not in my ward, I had just happened to come across her because she'd been in touch, you know, to find that she'd lost her husband, she'd lost her son, all within a couple of months of each other, and nobody in the benefit system helped this lady at all. And by the time I come across her, she was in the food bank with 3 young children, and the welfare rights officer went through everything, and this lady had missed out on £168 a week for 15 months and is not entitled to any of that back other than 1 month, because of the cruel systems out there. But the officers are seeing this day in, day out, the underclaimed benefits, the people that are so desperate. It's unbelievable. Do you mean? And the stories yesterday, and I take my hat off, there was a local area coordinator there for the Davati area, and everybody needs to listen to the story that he presented yesterday, because it was a lot of humour in it, but the things that he had connected, and the groups, and the work that the councillors in Castleward have got going on with this local area coordinator is amazing. Even to you, because I was with the drug use services today, to hear that our local area coordinator has naloxone on him for when he goes in is absolutely amazing. As a nurse, we've resuscitated many people with substance use. That naloxone is a lifesaver. And there's our staff go, you know, and housing, Andrea, the same housing, the officers. It's very complex out, and I just want to pay credit, because I don't think people realise sometimes how involved our staff are with people in their lives and how much they care about them. So.
Councillor Stewart Rice.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to the comments that other members have made, the thanks to the department and to the officers involved for the excellent work they do. They do a job that is probably some of the hardest jobs in society, and something definitely needs to be recognised. Just to reflect on the comments were just being made about the poverty section, I think it's worth celebrating some of the things that have happened in there, because you've had almost twice as many people finding gainful employment. through the schemes this year as last year. You've also had twice as many people gain accredited qualifications this year than last year. And you've also had a huge level of debt addressed, which, I mean, they're definitely worth celebrating those successes. And I've had personal experience of people working with the early hub, early intervention hub, and that seems to be really progressing well as an idea. There are a couple of areas I'd like to ask a few questions about, if I could. The main area really is based on child services there. Just trying to understand some of the details of the figures. It appears we have about the same amount of people on the protection register this year as last year, or roughly the same in both the year end and throughout the year. But we do seem to have a significant drop in contact with these people. So if you look at the three measures which are on page 25, it appears that we were in contact with these children a lot less than we were the year before. And there are a couple of other trends which are a little bit worrying. I just want to see if there's anything that's happening or something that we can do to assist it with. Is that care leavers experiencing homelessness has gone up quite a bit this year. And there also seems to be a drop in performance where it comes to people being overdue on visits from the team. It's probably explained by some of the things that you've told us earlier about staffing, but I think it was worth sort of noting that trend. In terms of the domiciliary care, that it's great to hear that we're at the low levels that we are now, and that's brilliant. Is there now a trend, because we've got over a bubble of demand, that means that we're dropping now from, so I think there were 751 new people who had domiciliary care last year, and there's only 641 this year. Is it because we've got over a demand bubble or something? Those are just a couple of areas I wanted to ask about. And the final one is from personal experience. I know how difficult this can be, is that the trend in families due to homelessness being in bed and breakfast has gone up from 1.7 in the COVID period to 10 days to now 13 days. Is there anything that the council can do to assist social services in any of its policies or integration of services that we can do to stop that from happening? Because living in bed and breakfast is very difficult.
I remember all of the questions. I'll turn first to that. First of all, I absolutely agree with, whilst I haven't singled out, apart from generally the successes of our tackling poverty services, you're quite right to emphasise those bits, and as the point that I made about, and we're supporting more and more people. But I absolutely agree with you in picking out those highlights. In relation to numbers of children subject to a child protection plan, so those numbers of children that are on the child protection register, you'd expect for our size population, the kind of challenges that we have in our population, if the arrangements that we have in place are working well, then generally I would work to an assumption that a healthy children's services service would be expecting to work with between 200 and 220 children at any given time. So if the numbers went much lower than that, I'd be worried about what's happening around our ability on a multi-agency basis and our population. Are we hearing enough about the circumstances that children are in? Are we missing things, or do we have an inadequate response at our front door? If the numbers went very high, it wouldn't necessarily mean that that we're making poor decisions, but it would probably be an indication that our services are under particular stress. We're not intervening early enough, therefore children's circumstances are escalating. And then now it's not a perfect science, and there have been certainly times, if you went back a decade, we have much lower numbers of children on the child protection register. That might have reflected that circumstances then for families were were perhaps better than they are at the moment. I think it was probably an indication that our services weren't as good, that safeguarding generally, not just in our area, but more generally, wasn't as strong as it is nowadays. There have been times in the intervening period where those numbers have gone up, and they generally have been associated with we haven't got the right services in the right place to enable the right sponsor at the right time. Didn't mean that we didn't end up eventually supporting children well. It just meant that we missed an opportunity probably to have supported them earlier. So at the moment, the numbers look about right for me. And I'd be worried if they varied significantly either way, up or down. In terms of you're right, again, to pick up on that area around the reports, or our ability to report on accurately on the frequency of our visits to children that are on the Child Protection Register. And that is a key indicator of the effectiveness of our safeguarding arrangements or not. We've delved into this a few times in Councillor Hood-Williams' scrutiny committee. That's a figure that we're not used to. And what the committee, or what we would talk to the committee about, is some of the challenges we had last year, having implemented the new national effectively care record, the system. And we had some challenges. Nationally, there were some challenges about how that system was working. Then we had some local challenges about following the implementation. And it meant that the reports that we were getting weren't necessarily accurate. What we were having to do to provide extra reassurance, both to me and Children's Services, but also scrutiny, and then the council, we then had to do manual checks to make sure actually we weren't missing out on visits. But the performance information that we have available to us is the performance information that's reported. What I can give assurance about is we've gone back and done manual checks to make sure that children are being visited when they needed to be, even if the system wasn't telling us that, and our formal reports were suggesting we might have a concern. But it was the right thing to pick up and be concerned about. And then I think your final general area was around the numbers of both children and young people and families that are in temporary accommodation, not the best accommodation. I don't know whether the cabinet member might want to comment on that as well. My own observation is, yes, we have a real challenge around sufficiency of provision, and that's spilled out across all cohorts. It is a worry to me when that impacts on care leavers, and we can't get the right accommodation as quickly as we'd like to for care leavers. But if it's any young people, or equally if it's families that may be in vulnerable circumstances, but again, it's a local, regional, national challenge, which again the cabinet member might want to comment on as well. I think I covered everything.
Councillor Lyndon Jones.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'll call in.
Thank you,
I'll
Presiding
come
Member.
back.
Could I thank Dave and his team? I've had occasion this year and a number of occasions this year to contact Dave personally, and also his team, and once or twice in some pretty difficult cases that people have got in touch with me, not just from my ward. And I have to say, big thanks for the very prompt and caring responses that I got. And your team do you and your team do a great service for the people of Swansea.
Councillor Andrea Lewis.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Member. Yes, just to come in on following David House's comments regarding the temporary accommodation. Obviously, as a local authority, we don't think that bed and breakfast is ideal accommodation for families. That is why we are working to bring more improved accommodation online. So I had the pleasure recently of attending the conversion of the Penland District Housing Office, which has been converted into 5 two-bedroom apartments and 1 one-bedroom apartment. I have to say, very spacious and able to accommodate families, and much better, more modern and fresh, recently renovated accommodation, far better than B&B with kitchen facilities and so on and so forth. And that is not the only accommodation that we're working on at the moment. And I look forward to bringing some more updates regarding accommodation that we're looking to procure and bring online over the next few months.
Well, if we move towards the vote, the recommendation is on page 10. Shall we vote to approve the annual report of the Director of Social Services 2022/2023? All those in favour? And all those against? Any abstentions? There we go. Thank you very much. That is carried. Can I also just thank Mr. Howes and his entire team as well for the report and the work that he's done. Item agenda 9 is the scrutiny annual report 2022 to 2023. And so I'll call on Councillor Peter Black, who is the chair of the Scrutiny Programme Committee.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Happy to move that report. Just to make a few points. I think scrutiny, this is the first annual report since the last council elections, and obviously there are a large number of new members who have been involved in scrutiny, and we continue to hopefully grow that and to make more use of the mechanisms we have so that people can effectively hold the executive to account, and to involve more members of the public as well in the scrutiny process, asking them for ideas what we can look at, and also encouraging them to participate if they're able to. Scrutiny, of course, is there to hold the Cabinet to account, to make evidence-based proposals on topics of concern through task and finish and scrutiny inquiry panels and other scrutiny activities. We monitor and challenge service performance and improvement through the standing performance panels, and address issues of concern through one-off working groups, acting on it and also act as a check on key decisions through pre-decision scrutiny and call-in. And all of those things we've been doing in the past year, and hopefully we'll continue to do that. Certainly, I think that we've been adding value to the work of the council, and hopefully some of the suggestions that have come out of scrutiny have also helped to inform the policy process, because scrutiny is a forward-looking process, not just a backward-looking one. It's there to not just to look at how we do things, but also how we can do things better, and so that and therefore it can contribute to the policy process. The only other point I wanted to make is we have now got a scrutiny training programme underway. We had the first training session this morning, and we have a next training session will be Monday and Tuesday next week, when we teaching people how to chair committees. I'm going to be attending all of them. I certainly encourage as many members as possible to attend those training sessions. It was very, very useful this morning in terms of the work that we did, and certainly I think it helped everyone a lot if they're able to attend and take part of that. So that's my introduction, Chair. Happy to answer questions and also to move the report.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Rob Stewart.
Yeah, Chair, it's just to thank Peter and all of the members that have taken part in scrutiny. As Councillor Black did say, you know, the work there does add value to the work that is done in this council, and very much appreciate the contributions made by members in terms of helping us to deliver on our commitments.
I can't see any other questions or comments, and there is no vote required on that item. So I will move on to item agenda 10, which is the policy commitments progress. And so I'll call on Rob Stewart, leader of the council.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Member. I'll be relatively brief on this one. This report is an update for members in terms of the corporate policy commitments that we have. Promised as part of the overarching policy of council. Now, this covers, as you go through the report, many areas of council that are of high importance, but also many of the things that we promised as a political party during last year's election campaign. And of course, what was in our manifesto was then translated into policy commitments of council. So just some highlights from that. So firstly, the headline, members should be pleased to know that we have already, thanks to the work undertaken by the Cabinet, the Service Transformation Committees and members, and officers managed to complete 71% of the commitments that we laid out just a year ago, and a further 24 are on track for delivery. Some of the highlights within that include the work which is well advanced now on the Kevin Hengoed Comprehensive School, completing the upgrade of the works in Kevin Hengoed School itself, but also creation of the new 7 million sports barn in Bonnymaen, which will be the largest ever sports development on Swansea's east side. We've expanded free school meal provision, and that rollout will continue this year. I know Councillor Smith and the education officers are continuing with that. But we also took the opportunity in the budget to freeze school meal prices where they are charged for. And again, that has helped families facing a cost of living crisis. We continued progress in our city centre, delivering the hub at 7172 Kingsway. Members may have seen the images recently of the internal fit out for that building, which should be completed in the coming months. And interest from tenants is high. And again, we hope to make announcements on those tenants in due course. We have planted already over 300 new trees in the last 12 months, and that does not include small whips, of which there are thousands planted across the authority. We've awarded over 92 grants to towns and villages and communities worth over £500,000. We've completed the £500 million investment in better quality council housing, which we'll see, obviously, which has seen a significant improvement in the quality of housing across the authority. And of course, we'll be moving to phase 2, which will improve energy efficiency as well in homes across Swansea over the next year or so. We've also become Wales's first human rights city. And again, the work on delivering the Human Rights Action Plan is now underway. We've supported Ukrainian refugees, families to settle in Swansea. We've provided support for eligible households to claim the range of extra benefits, ensuring that they claimed the allowances that they were entitled to, and also provided the cost of living support payments from the Welsh Government. We've supported more than 120 community projects to succeed. We've delivered the strategy for the investment of £1 million for new skate parks and facilities across the city, and we'll bring forward details on those sites in due course. We're obviously well advanced in terms of the investment in our new play areas. Another 5 started this month, which are all funded through the Economic Recovery Fund. And that's seeing some £6.5 million being delivered into our play areas across Swansea, being led by Councillor Robert Francis Davis, Councillor Andrew Stevens and the team. Even though the pressures that were referenced earlier, which are acute in terms of our housing waiting lists, we've maintained our always a bed commitment to those who find themselves as homeless, and we are still the only council to maintain that commitment. New local neighbourhood cleansing teams are operational, as many of you will know. Our CWAT teams are our tidy teams, doing deep cleans, litter picking, and tackling other issues in communities. And I know Councillor Anderson and his team continue to do some great work to make sure our communities are as clean as possible. We've started delivery of the next phase of walking and cycling routes, and Councillor Stevens is continuing the rollout of those. The next generation of lighting continues. More importantly, of course, the high-profile lighting of the bay, which will commence shortly. We've introduced hundreds of new litter bins across Swansea, helping people to dispose of dog waste as well as other litter more easily. And that is just a flavour of the hundreds of things that we are currently delivering. But unlike that list, if you'd have listened to our colleagues up in Manchester this week, we haven't cancelled a single big scheme. Everything that we promised, we're actually delivering. And of course, a little bit like our colleagues in Manchester, we will do more. But of course, ours will be ones that people can have confidence we deliver. They won't just be announcements. They will see changes and impacts on the grounds. When we say something, we actually do it. So very proud of the work going on. Can I thank again Cabinet, the senior management team and all of the staff that are helping to deliver real change across Swansea.
Councillor Peter Black.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 4 questions on this report, if that's okay.
Sorry, Chair, just before we do it, Councillor
Yes,
Stephen
second
needs
it,
to
yeah.
second the report.
Yeah, I'll call in Councillor David Hopkins.
Yeah, thanks, Presiding Member. What I would like to do is just, in moving this, I'd like to say thank you for the leader for his stewardship, his leadership, and also his project management skills coming to being, particularly in our cabinet chairs meeting. And put on record, I know you've thanked officers and councillors. My thanks to you, and on behalf of the cabinet, please keep us on our toes as you always do. Thank you again. So happy to move. Happy to second the report.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Black.
Thank you, Chair. As I said, I've got 4 questions on this, but first of all, just to say this, it's quite clear from the report that some progress, lots of progress has been made on the pledges which the leader set out in this report. So, congratulations on that. The first one is on the rollout of public free Wi-Fi. I noticed you've started this. I'm just wondering if there's a timescale and some idea of the extent of that, which is as it's rolled out. The second one is on the public and local services hubs in communities. Again, I'm interested in a timescale and some details of the rollout of that. So which communities get them first? What's the final destination of that particular policy? In paragraph 2.3.66, which is on page 164, in relation to Skyline, it concludes by saying Cabinet have approved grant funding support and PAC is complete. Now, I understand that the Welsh Government have offered grant support and that we've given some assistance with land acquisition. Does this also mean that we've given grant funding to Skyline, or is that still under consideration? And then the final question, you referred, of course, to the pressures which we're under in terms of homelessness and housing and some of the work that's been done then. I noticed from the news this morning that the Home Office is changing the time which refugees are able to stay in temporary accommodation once they've achieved refugee status. And estimates this is going to add about 50,000 people to the homelessness list throughout the UK. I'm just wondering if that's likely to impact us on us in Swansea, and what plans we've made to try to deal with that, if that's at all possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Black. I'll deal with some of those questions, but feel free for Cabinet members to add some commentary. If I deal with Skyline first, because I think that answer has already been given in other venues. As you know, we have in principle offered support for the Skyline scheme, but that, as I've been very clear in other areas, that is a fully repayable amount to the council, and we have put in place arrangements with Skyline to ensure that happens. Obviously, as we've confirmed elsewhere, we have not provided them with the grant or with a loan at this point in time, but the principle of doing so has been established. In terms of the rollout of free Wi-Fi, our aim is to deliver that over the next year or so across a number of communities. Again, it's to ensure that nobody is without the ability to access information and services. I think Councillor Stevens may be able to give a more detailed update in terms of where we actually are, but certainly that is in trail. And of course, that is layered over the work that we're doing in the city region in terms of the digital project, where we're working to ensure that the final connectivity to public buildings, etc., are rolled out, and that no communities are left without certainly high-speed connections. And there are a number of different schemes coming together to make sure that we do that. I'll leave Councillor Lewis to answer the housing one. Remind me what your third one was. Apologies.
Yeah, public and local service hubs.
Public and local services hubs. The aim will be, as we create the main new public service hub in the city centre in the old British Home store, to take some learnings from that and then to try and create bespoke hubs across the community, bringing together library services, potentially housing and other services that the council offer in one location, creating one-stop shops across the authority. The aim will be there to make sure that we sustain services so that, where you co-locate them, it's better for residents to have numerous things that they can get in one location. But of course, treating them like cakes, the ingredients of what will be in each hub will be unique to each area depending on the services that are there. So I think, it's something we're very keen to do because it should give communities better ranges of services closer to where they live.
I'll call in Councillor Andrew Lewis to answer that specific question.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Member. Yes, on a local level and a national level, as in my role as the spokesperson for housing through the WLGA and spokesperson for asylum seekers and refugees, I am working very closely with the Wales Strategic Migration Partnership Executive Board. We've been pushing the Home Office to make sure that we have a place-based approach. As we know, Swansea, one of the main 4 dispersal areas in Wales, but we're keen to ensure that all 22 local authorities play their part. We're also, in addition to that, working through the implications of the Illegal Migration Act, and this is part of it. So it will inevitably impact on us, as it will impact on all 22 local authorities. But as we have an excellent track record of being a city of sanctuary, and also with the human rights city that we are looking at, we will continue to support refugees and asylum seekers in Swansea, but the impact is yet to be reviewed, and I can't tell you exact numbers at the moment. I can tell you that we are being impacted already by the Home Office's accelerated application process. And as a result, whereas we would normally see between now and the end of the year 50 applications, we're actually expecting around 200 applications. So there will be pressures on us, but I'm really keen as chair of the Migration Partnership Board and also through the WLGA to make sure that every council plays its part in Wales and that there's a fair distribution. I can tell you every council has an appetite to do that, but we have to work closely with the Home Office to make sure that suitable accommodation is available within every local authority boundary. Hopefully that answers the question. I haven't got the exact answers today, but we will be assessing and watching the impact very closely.
Councillor Wendy Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Leader, for your report. You mentioned trees, and I think we're all interested in the fate of trees these days. And I have a particular interest because, unfortunately, I've lost some significant trees in my ward over the years. And just this week, I had to have a tree taken down in my own garden through ash dieback. You know, it was a tree I planted when I first moved in, so it was very, very upsetting. So I just wondered, you know, it's great that we're planting trees, and like everyone else, I have been planting trees in my ward. I just wondered, do we keep a record of the number of trees that we've had to remove as a council because of ash dieback, because of all these other diseases that seem to be out there? I just think it's important that we know if we are actually planting more than we are losing, because we are certainly losing trees at the moment. That was my first question. And then, Leader, you also mentioned, and it's in paragraph, it's paragraph 2.3.89, and it's the active travel routes. Well, you can understand I have a particular interest in active travel routes at the moment. But also I have been doing a bit of research, and it seems that there's been research done by national papers as well. And one report that I read said that while cycling boomed during COVID, the latest figures from the Department of Transport show that cycling levels have fallen to near pre-COVID levels. So now there's something out there that some of you may have heard of. I'm afraid I was ignorant, but there is something called the Cycling Level Index Score. And this score for June showed that we were just under 114 compared to 163 in the middle of the pandemic. Now, I'm sure you will all understand better than me what that means, but I can grasp the fact that there is a decline in the take-up of cycling. And I have to say my personal experience has been that we have this wonderful facility in my ward, but those especially interested in cycling, carry on using the road. So you can understand where I'm coming from on this. Should we be spending vast sums of taxpayers' money in installing more active travel routes? Some I can run with, but when they impact negatively on people's lives, I think we need to call a halt. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I think, look, the question on whether we should invest in cycling routes, given all of the priorities that are before us, is something that you need to ask of the Welsh and UK governments, because obviously both governments have strong commitments to climate change, and we're only going to meet those commitments if we change the way in which we travel. And part of that is providing accessible networks for people to walk safely, because it's not just about people cycling on those networks. Those are also safe walking routes as well, and providing that they have a network so that people can get using their bike or walking to a train or a tram or a bus, rather than having to use their car. That is part of the overarching aim of trying to get a modal shift, as it's called, in how people travel, so that we all make a contribution to climate change when we take our journeys. So I understand, and it is a challenge. I have to say it is one of those oddities within the climate change discussion, that sometimes when you implement an active travel route, you may have to remove a tree, for instance, in order to put the route in. But again, what we've tried to do when we've been implementing cycle routes within the City and County of Swansea is to always replace on a 2-for-1 basis, and to try where possible to design around these. So I do understand the point you're making. I would say, again, I don't know which months you've chosen for the comparisons, but we have had a very wet summer that may have played a part in it. And of course, I think at the height of the pandemic, people were using all the opportunities they possibly could to get out of their homes, and that probably would have increased the amount of people choosing to cycle or walk whenever they could. Apologies, I've forgotten your first question. What was it in relation on trees? Yeah. So the tree team, as you'll appreciate, have a significant amount of work to do with ash dieback, and again, that programme is well laid out. So yes, there will be a record of all of the trees removed from ash dieback. I guess what it won't capture is where private companies have come in and perhaps removed trees, or where there has been dieback in areas which are not covered by ourselves. But certainly the work that we do would be part of a programme which is captured. And obviously part of the work that we're doing on net zero and tree planting is to try and redress some of that.
Councillor Andrew Stevens, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My response was actually to Peter, Councillor Black, sorry, on the CCTV. So yeah, no, appreciate that, but there has been some delays with the free Wi-Fi and CCTV rollout. It's a lot out of our control in terms of the needing fibre upgrades in a few other areas, but we are back on track, so we'll hopefully start seeing some of them coming soon, and I'd be happy to provide you a written response with the timeline of as we're there, but please keep in mind that we are beholden to some outside organisations as well.
Councillor Peter May.
Thank you, presiding member. EV charging, the target says council will strive to install more EV charging points across the county, supporting towards move towards more EV ownership. How many points did we have before the target was made? We're striving to install more. What is the target, or the numerical target to install? I do have sympathy. Mutlers Ward members recently met with the EV charging officers there, and it seems to me that the grants that we can apply for only from Welsh Government or solely from Welsh Government are pretty restrictive on what we can actually do to actually grow and expand any network or infrastructure. Are we looking at other types of grant funding
such as Innovate UK or other types to expand the network. So in a nutshell, how many EV charging points did we have when the target was set? What are you going to aspire to get the target to actually turn that from on track to completed, from green to blue? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor May. I think what I will do will get you a written answer to check the actual point at which we introduced the report. So that would have been June last year. So we can get you the figure probably from May or June last year. In terms of the vagueness of more, I can assure you it doesn't mean that we're just going to do one and then we'll claim that we've done it. The ambition is to ensure that we've got a sustainable and comprehensive charging network. I think one of the challenges has been that, of course, UK government have been flip-flopping in terms of their commitments to climate change and green energy initiatives. They've now abandoned their target for moving from diesel and petrol vehicles. That will have made things a bit more complicated for many companies that were proposing to provide those services. Obviously, manufacturers have voiced their concerns as well. But what our commitment will be, we will continue to seek grant funding from Welsh Government, from UK Government, and obviously make provision ourselves for expanding that network. And obviously, we'll encourage private firms as well, because our network is only part of the overall network that's available to electric vehicle chargers.
Councillor Angela O'Connor.
Thank you. I appreciate it is getting, less and less people. It's harder for people basically to come out of using their cars and use walking and cycling more. Obviously, that's not helped by less buses being with all the buses that have basically been axed recently, and obviously more complicated for people planning on using the buses more now, as there's obviously less services. Just wanted to mention that. But I noticed that you talked about the library hubs. I'm just interested if certain libraries are going to be affected, such as Mumbles or maybe Calais.
So I think important that you mention the bus services, because obviously as a council we don't run the bus services, but we obviously do what we can to work with the private operators to make sure that the routes are maintained. I mean, we argued against deregulation because we thought that the Thatcherite government that put in deregulation would lead us to this point where we were at over a barrel by private companies, and we've got an ambition to obviously step in and run more services ourselves, or in conjunction with Transport for Wales or other partners. And I think, one of the things that would really help us on the bus services in Wales and in Swansea would be if we actually got the £6.2 billion consequential that we're owed from HS2, because of course that scheme, even with its smaller scale, was classed as an England and Wales scheme, even though not an inch of track is in Wales, and that is one of the great robberies that's taken place by any UK government from the people of Wales. Because you put it into context, £6.2 billion is not a small amount of money. It would allow us to build all of our rail metro networks in Wales. It would allow us to resurface every road in Wales. It would allow us to nationalise the bus system in Wales, and it would still leave several £billion over for us to improve our schools, our hospitals and other services. So it's not a small amount of money, and we are owed it. So I would hope, as a Conservative member or a member of the Conservative Party, you'll obviously be making those arguments to the Conservative government in London, so that in the hope that Wales will get its fair share. I'll certainly support you in making those arguments. But on your main question,
Well, we can try, Rob, on that. But you did say you had ambition, didn't you, to put more bus services in? So that would be good if you can follow that through.
Absolutely. Get me the money, we'll do it. That's the deal. So, sorry, I forgot what your question was now. What was it?
Oh, the second one was about the library hubs. Just
library hubs. Yeah, I can give you an assurance on that. Look, the aim would be we've got, I think, 17 libraries across the city. The provision is very unequal at the moment. I think if you go to some of the libraries, yeah, absolutely. So the areas that you mentioned have the most provision of any libraries in Swansea. And if you go to places like Bonnie Mine, where the provision is as limited as 2 hours a week, and that can't be right. So we've got to look at a different model whereby we bring together services, we sustain our libraries, but we give it a fair provision across the city and county of Swansea. But certainly there would be no plans to close libraries, certainly no plans to do away with libraries in the areas you've mentioned. But what we are looking to do is to bring forward a model that sustains them all.
Thank you.
Councillor Sue Jones.
Thank you, Presiding Member. My question's on page 159, 2.3.27, the commitment for free use of sports pitches for sports clubs. And then it goes on to say that the scheme has now been concluded and a new pricing tariff is going forward, has been agreed. So clarification really, are the pitches free to sports clubs?
Yes, so the position was at the time when we made the commitment, we said that we would continue with the decision we'd made during COVID to reduce the fees to zero, because we knew that the clubs were struggling. In discussion with the clubs, who obviously, you know, when clubs operate the teams, they collect subs, etc. So what we've done is to introduce reintroduce the fee charges, because we want to make sure that those pitches and parks, etc., are maintained. But we've done so in a way that is fair, and I think is still below the levels when we had the fees prior to COVID. So what we've done is to return to a bit more of a normal operation, but we did, as we promised, maintain the free period for the first year of this administration.
Councillor Stewart Rice.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I've got two very quick questions. Great minds think alike. Councillor Jones, I was following you in on this question on 159. Could you give us the details of the charges that are being introduced so that so we're aware of them? And the second question occurs on page 167, which is 2.3.88, which makes reference to the Sale to Wales process that's happening at the moment to do with the consultancy of the International Sport Science Village. Can I presume that that's St Helens?
So I believe that what that refers to is the entirety of the proposed International Sports Village, which could include a redevelopment of St Helens, which would see, and let's be clear what that is, because I think there were, I think, mischievous words previously. I'll describe them as that. There is no suggestion here of St Helens being bulldozed and turned into flats or other developments. This is about reinvestment in a St Helens, which is capable of hosting sporting events, which also has links to things like innovation in sports science and links to the university's expertise in that area, and then recreation of a truly viable sports village with many elements stretching the length from potentially St Helens down to the university, and potentially the revised facilities which are currently underway around the Wales National Pool and the King George V playing fields, which is again seeing investment as part of the city deal.
Thank you. Well, I can't see anyone else indicating, and so there's no vote required for this item. And so we'll move on then to item agenda 11, which is councillors' questions. And so I'll ask if there's any supplementary questions for question 1. No supplementaries. Question 2, are there any supplementaries? Councillor Peter May.
Thank you for the cabinet member for the response to the question. A couple of points have raised here. Point C, yes, guidance has been agreed for existing structures. Would it be possible to circulate the guidance, please, to members? Part D, remaining 4 sites being contacted with a view to making the sites permanent, but this will follow a formal consultation. A bit concerned about the answer with a view to making the sites permanent. Can I have an assurance that the consultation will be If it comes out against the against it, that those views will be noted, you know, on each individual site on a case-by-case basis. Thank you.
Yeah, could I give definitely some guarantees on the consultation that will take place? That will obviously be done through its normal channels, through a TRO. But could I just amend, when this went to publish, there were 4 premises, it's now down to 3. So 3 premises are now proceeding, not 4. And yes, I can give that's then guarantees.
And the guidance to be circulated to members, please, Cabinet Member.
Yeah, once that's available, I will circulate it.
There's no further supplementaries. Question number 3. Are there any further supplementary questions? Councillor Stewart Rice.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I've got 3 quick supplementaries to this one. The first one, is the term spalling relevant here? Because normally spalling relates to natural weathering or a chemical reaction leading to concrete coming away from a structure. It usually takes about 10 to 20 years for spalling to occur. The second one really is, given that large chunks, about a foot or so of the concrete has fallen away from height, what's the nature of the inspections that have been undertaken to make sure that the building is safe from ever other similar spalls? And the third and final question is the South car park suffering from the same problems as the North car park?
Yeah, I'll take those on behalf of the Cabinet Member. In terms of the overarching scheme, I take all 3 points together. So we are currently, as you'll be aware, just appointed Wilmot Dixon as the new contractor. I have to be a little bit careful about some of the things I say in public session, but more than happy to try and add detail in private session if that is required. I'm sure we can do that. But essentially, part of the process now has been to do a detailed audit of the works that are currently outstanding, but that also includes the standard of the works that are currently in progress. So that will be picked up. As we've said publicly, we've made suitable provision, we believe, in terms of protecting the council position to ensure all of those works can be done. But our belief at the moment is the majority of the south side has been completed. And again, there are minor issues to be resolved there. The north side, where the multi-storey car park is, there was rework going on already by Buckingham because we were unhappy with some of the standard of the works there, which we'd agreed with them that they would do. But of course, while they were doing that, they then fell into administration, which is where now Wilmot Dixon will come in and they will complete those works with the monies, using some of the monies that we've secured. Part of that process is, of course, then working with bond managers on behalf of the administrators to ensure that those works are appropriate and in line with the contract, etc. So again, I'm more than happy to go into more detail privately, but again, given that we're in that live process at the moment, administrators are involved. Again, I can't say any more publicly due to the obviously the confidential nature of the discussions we're having.
Councillor Peter May.
Thank you, Leader, for the response to my colleague, Councillor Rice. You mentioned outstanding snagging items. Would it be possible to, if it doesn't breach confidentiality, to circulate to members the list of snagging items, please?
Yeah, I don't think we can share the entire list of items that are outstanding, but they will. I mean, I can say publicly because people will be aware of some of them. There were issues with the lift, and again, you know, we've had issues through the contractual arrangements with Buckingham and onto the lift provider for a specific part that is required to bring that lift back into use. I believe that is being resolved. Work has already been completed on the stairs, that the circular stairs that were leading to the arena. There was some finishing works in terms of the standard of the finish was not appropriate. around some of the elements of the arena. So it's that scale of works. The more substantial works are in terms of the completion of the build on the north site, and those are the ones that are more difficult to talk about in the current thing. They are not ones that cause us concern. It's just that they are not completed, and we need to ensure that they are completed and to the right standard. So again, the snagging elements are the ones that people will have seen on social media or will have seen when they visited the premises themselves.
Thank you. If there's no further supplementary questions, I'll draw this item on the agenda to a close, which might be the quickest I think we've ever got through councillors' questions. Item agenda 12 is the notice of motion for the commemorative woodland. I'm going to hand over to Miss Edwards, who will explain a bit more.
Well, Mr. Edwards here. It's a recurring theme, clearly. Okay. The notice of motion was submitted initially by Councillor Chris Evans and 2 other councillors. There's been an amendment by the Labour group, which has been accepted by the original submitter of the motion. So now you will be dealing with the amended motion. I have emailed it to you all several hours ago and I've put it in the chat. But for those who've missed it, I will read it out for absolute clarity. I can't hear what you said there, I'm sorry. We call for a report to Cabinet which could outline the options for delivery and maintenance of a commemorative woodland to mark the 100-year anniversary of the cenotaphs and the sacrifice that the people from all communities serving in our armed forces have made in service of our country. The options will take into account the budget position, the Council's current tree planting strategy, and ongoing work to map out areas of Council land to further increase the tree cover as part of its net zero strategy. The review should consider the options to have a tree planted in their name and an online record created accessed via QR code, outlining details of their life and family to ensure their names and sacrifices are not lost to history. So that is what you'll be voting on this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. I will call for the motion to be proposed by Councillor Chris Evans.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. So the motion initially came from a chat that I had with Dr. Gethin Matthews, who's a senior lecturer in history, heritage and classics in Swansea Uni. He's got a particular interest in ancient monuments. And he mentioned to me that it was the centenary of the cenotaph. And as part of that conversation, he said something that really sort of stuck with me. And that was, it's a shame that it won't be here in another 100 years. And that really sort of brought to me the immediacy of the climate crisis that we're facing and the work that we need to do, but on a local level. As we all know, most of Swansea city centre, the sandfields, even this room in which we're all sitting, they're all at threat from rising sea levels because it's all just a couple of metres at most above the current sea level. So the idea of a commemorative woodland is just a small piece of work that would help to avert the worst of what's to come. But it actually, what it does is provides a win-win. There's a raft of benefits that would actually come with the financial outlay. First of all, it would ensure the names and deeds of those named on all of the cenotaphs around Swansea are not lost to history when sort of climate change arrives. What we actually have is a chance to actually enhance our knowledge of their lives and deeds. With the addition of the lectern boards with the QR codes, we could actually allow people to access more information about the names and the lives and the families and the deeds of these brave men and women. The second benefit it helps us to move towards achieving the corporate priority of climate and biodiversity. By creating a diverse broadleaf woodland, it's going to have a huge effect on increasing biodiversity within the city and county at a time when it's actually under pressure from development on all sides. This woodland could become a much needed haven for biodiversity and local wildlife. Thirdly, it could provide a new green tourist destination. Depending on our ambitions for the project, we've got the potential to make it an actual go-to destination if we include things like walking paths, cycling paths, bridleways, and it could become a real sort of visitor attraction that's 100% future generations compliant. There's also education benefits where we could get local schools involved, not just with the planting of the initial woodland, but it could be somewhere where teachers could take our local youngsters and help them to bring local history to life. And finally, it's an idea that has little sort of maintenance costs in the long run. A woodland is actually self-maintaining. So every time a tree falls, there's new growth that replaces it. So it'll maintain itself over time. So the actual ongoing revenue costs would be quite low. So to sum up, I'm recommending the creation of a report to council to create a commemorative woodland to you this evening, as it provides a win-win opportunity, not only to provide a valuable carbon sink and a haven for local wildlife, but also an invaluable opportunity to preserve the names and deeds of those that sacrificed so much for us and to bring the background stories to life for future generations. Thank you.
If I can call on a seconder for the motion, Councillor Wendy Lewis, the Armed Forces Champion.
Thank you, President Member. I would like to second this amendment, and as Armed Forces Champion, I believe that this amendment is so important that it calls for a full Cabinet review to be carried out. If this is going to be delivered, we must get it right because of the sensitivity of this subject, as we wouldn't want to leave anyone off the list. So we need to be practical when dealing with this. We cannot underestimate the ask in terms of recognising every veteran in Swansea. The last thing we want to do is miss someone out who made those sacrifices. I feel very strongly about this, and I hope every member in the chamber will support this amendment, which I feel very passionate about. Thank you, Deputy Presiding Member.
You, Councillor Chris Holly. Oh, Councillor Sam Bennett.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Member. I just want to say that I think this is a really important motion, and I think the council should support it. And I welcome the amendment. I think the amendment really does improve the motion overall, and I totally agree with what was just said. But I think it's particularly what I think is really good about the motion is particularly important incorporating the current tree planting scheme as well into this. It will allow all the communities to have somewhere to remember the people who have made sacrifices for every community nearby, not just all in a few places. And I think that's a real strength to the amendment that's been made here. And I think that will bring remembrance closer to people's homes, and also in doing so, make the give us the benefit of the trees bring to our communities as well. So the cooling impact in our urban communities, as well as the placemaking impact. And I think, speaking as a ward member of a ward that is predicted to more or less be washed away if with rising sea levels, I think it's really important that we consider the net zero part of this as well.
Councillor Stuart Rice.
Thank you. I'd like to support the motion as well. I think it's a very touching and sensible way forward. If you go back about 100 years and look at when all the cenotaphs were put in place, almost all of them were actually dedicated to Hague at the time. I've got a bit of family history that links to my great uncle. As Hague wasn't available to be there at the opening of the cenotaph in Sydenham, my great uncle was sent because he was decorated, and he'd been a bin man because the local people voted for him to do it. So I think it would be very good to have a wood here which is truly dedicated to the people that gave their lives. Unlike other cenotaphs in the past being dedicated to an individual, we've got a chance to do something a little bit different here and really remember everybody. And I think it's a great way forward. There's probably some really good green spaces where more trees could be put, and we could certainly look to add to our targets in terms of meeting the net zero.
Can't see Councillor David Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. Just so we're clear, and we don't get confused with the amendment to the original motion. The original motion talked about the names on the cenotaph. The revised scheme is to include all those who have died. So when this goes out, I just want to make clear that we're not going to end up with a discussion about, oh, you're forgetting people. So it will include all those who've given their lives, not just the ones who are named on the cenotaph.
There we go. If nobody else wishes to speak, I'll call on Councillor Chris Evans for closing statements, if you have any.
I didn't know I covered everything in the opening statement. Thank you.
There we go. All those in favour of this motion? And all those against? And any abstentions? No, that's unanimous. Well, with the conclusion of that, can I thank you all for your attendance, and can I thank you for being well behaved as well? Thank you very much.